One of the great things about working with acrylic paints is it gives us an opportunity to create interesting textures in our paint by adding things and also by using things we might have lying around the house. And that's exactly what we're going to do this week on Mixed Media Masters. Hello makers, and welcome to the studio. If this is your first time here, then good to have you here. Welcome along. If you like working with abstract art and acrylic paints and watercolor paints and collage and all sorts of things, this might be the place for you. We'd love to have you join us on a regular basis. We drop a video every single week exploring what's going on in creation of all sorts of things. And this week, no exception. Now this week we're going to pick up a little bit on what we started last week, which was how can we create some interesting effects when we're working with acrylic paints. Now last week we really focused on brush effects. If I use different brushes, what kind of results can I get? This week we're going to talk about different textures we can create with, I don't know, materials we might have just lying around the house. And I want to start with a couple of explorations. We're going to be working on these just simple, kind of, it's a laboratory, right? So we have these 6 inches by 6 inch pieces of Strathmore heavy-duty watercolor paper, and I'll put a link down below if you're interested in finding this. It's my go-to paper. I love it. It takes a fair amount of abuse and wet. One of the things I want to be able to do now is just say, if I wanted to create something, and by the way, I have a standard palette set up here with some basic colors. So I'm just going to get some painting going on in here. Let me grab some red and yellow. Those are colors that will do a fairly good job of working together. And what I want to do is I want to kind of get in here and I want to do a fairly good job of getting my piece of paper covered with different pigments here. So let me get the yellow in here, and I might even wet it down a little bit. It's a little thick, and so by adding a little bit of water from my cleaning jar, don't tell anyone, I can come in here and I can really just make my paint spread a little bit better and kind of get in here as well. There we go. That looks good. Now that's going to be working with some of the yellow. I'm going to do something similar with the red. I'm not even going to clean my brush. How about that? I'm just going to come in here and say, let's get some of this red color down here. Another blob in here. You get that. And we'll kind of blend these two guys together. So there we go. Red and yellow. But we're not done yet. We're not done yet. Because what I really want to do is, when these dry, they will dry. When they dry, they're going to be somewhat flat colors. And what I want to do is I want to create kind of more of an interrelationship between the red and the yellow, but also I want to really create something that almost looks like it has facets, like we're looking at something that has a polygon. And how are we going to do that? We're going to use plastic wrap. So again, something you might have lying around the house. I certainly had some lying around my house. But what I want to do is I want to come in here and I want to cover my piece of artwork with the plastic wrap. And what I'm also going to do is I'm going to kind of massage in here like this, and I'm going to massage especially on the border where the two colors come together. But I'm going to press the plastic wrap down because I want it to come in contact with the paint as much as possible here. All right, and just kind of give it, again, an opportunity for this blend of red and yellow to make a bit of a pseudo orange here in the middle. And the objective here is to be able to create an opportunity for this paint to stick to the plastic wrap, because the next thing we're going to do, which is remove the plastic wrap, is going to leave behind an interesting textural effect. So let's come in here and let's pull it up like this and like that. Now you can't really see it super well, perhaps yet, but as it dries, you're going to be able to see brighter and less bright areas between the different colors. Now also, if you're working with colors and you're doing some layering of colors, where you might have a lighter blue over a darker blue here, the darker blue may be picked up and reveal the lighter blue underneath. So again, what we're trying to do is get away from this idea of just flat basic colors and create something that has a little bit more of a texture, especially where colors blend together. You can see kind of a cool effect in there. Now, this is the kind of thing that you can certainly work on and finesse over time. But there we go. Something that will give us the effects that we want. And yeah, just as close as your nearest kitchen. Now that is our first effect. Let's go take a look at number 2. All right, let's grab another piece of paper and let's go for our next mystery ingredient here. And I'm going to start by getting let me get a kind of an interesting mix. Again, I think I'm going to mix some colors here just to keep it more interesting. I'm going to take this turquoise blue here, and let's get this down on our paper. we go. And I'm going to add some of this teal blue to it. So we're going to get a blend of those guys. And again, we already have a fairly nice texture going here. I want to get it kind of wet. And again, I might just grab a little bit of additional water here. And oftentimes what I'll have when I'm working on any kind of paint project is a spray bottle with water in it. So I can do things like this, because this is less elegant, but there we go, it worked. And get the water mixed in with my acrylic paints, and it will thin it out nicely. Now the reason I'm doing this is because actually what I want to do is I want to put something onto my paint which will draw the water out. And so I'm going to reach into my magic bin of goodies here, and I'm going to pull out a ramekin that has kosher salt in it. So once again, this is also from my kitchen. And as you can see, this is a very coarse grain salt, and you can buy it in large boxes at your nearest supermarket. And I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to just kind of sprinkle it in an area. Maybe I'll just make kind of a square here. We'll leave the inside unfilled. And what I'm hoping will happen here, well, I know will happen here, is that the moisture in the paint will start being attracted to the salt. Now, this is going to take a while to dry, and so what I want to be able to do is come back in a little bit and be able to see what happens when we let this dry and the moisture gets drawn into the salt. And what I may end up doing, and again I can do this with the watercolor paper, is I may take this and I may wash the salt off of it in the sink and see what's left behind. So we'll come back to that one in a little bit before the big reveal. We'll find out what's going on. But for now, let's go to our third texture making approach and see what's in store for us. Okay, so our next technique is going to involve something that's rather common to almost every household, and we have a couple of different options depending on how we want to approach it. I'm going to go with a roll of paper towels. Let me grab one of my sheets here. And what I want to do with the paper towel, and by the way, when you go and shop for paper towels, you may never actively think about the pattern that's on your paper towels, but this is one of those places where that might come in handy. And what I'm going to do here is there are a couple different approaches. One, I can put the paint down on the piece of paper first, or I can put it through the paper towel. Let's try both methodologies here and see what kind of results we get. I'm going to start by grabbing one of my paintbrushes here, and let's get that cleaned up a little bit here. And I'm going to pick up some of this teal blue, and I'm going to put it onto the piece of paper directly. And again, I want to create something that's a little bit wet, because that's going to help me with the texturization that I'm looking for here. Might need some more paint, but this will get us there most of the way. And let me get some wet on my brush and get this area pretty wet. And I'm going to get a little bit more water in here as well. All right. Now the objective overall, again, when we're working on a piece of paper like this, is now, can I come in with a piece of paper towel and use it almost like a blotter, where I'm going to pat that down or place it there and pull out as much water as I can and then peel it off. Let's give that a try. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to put my paper towel down over my painted area here and press down on it. Give it a moment to absorb as much moisture as I can. There we go. Looks like it's pretty good. And then I'm going to peel the whole thing up and see what kind of results we get. Okay? Now it's very subtle, but again, you can see some of the holes, or the square holes, that are included as part of the paper towel. So that's a pretty interesting effect if that's the kind of thing you want. So that's one thing. Let's grab another. And this time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the paper towel onto the piece of paper, and I'm going to use a fairly liquefied version. I have some paint here that has been watered down and is in a squeeze bottle. And I'm going to come in here and I'm going to just kind of give it a little bit of a squeeze onto the paper towel above my paper. That's one of my colors. And I have a second color here. I'm going to grab this purple, and let's do the same thing. We just kind of squirt it into this area here. Now what I'm doing here that's a little bit different is I'm letting the paint and the wetness soak down through the paper towel to get onto the paper that's underneath. And if I peel it back a little bit, again, it's not really doing a whole heck of a lot. So one of the things I might want to do is fold my paper towel over and kind of pat it down through. I'm going to apply a little bit of pressure here so I can push it down toward the paper as well as up to the second layer of the paper towel I have here on top. Okay, but I'm trying to get that moisture kind of corralled. And once I have that done, then it's just an opportunity to peel, peel, peel. And again, you can start to see the different effects that we might have here with the paint colors that are coming through. So that is just, again, it's an easy enough thing to experiment with, but as you can see, we can either work on paint that's already on the paper or use the paper towel to, in essence, apply the paint to the paper and get some very different effects as a result of this. So again, something to play around with, but it's something that you might have some interesting opportunities to work with. By the way, speaking of which, I'm going to show you a variation on this theme. We'll consider it within the paper towel realm. Some toilet paper. That's right. I'm going to use, grab the length of toilet paper here, and I'm going to do something very similar. Let me take a square and drop it onto this piece of scrap paper here. Let's use some similar colors to what we just had. Again, I'm going to come in here and add some orange on this side. And I have a blue color here. Let's put that blue in the middle. Make that kind of wet. Make that go through. And then what do we have? We'll do the purple again. We'll do that purple right down here like that. Okay. Now, the thing that's very different here about paper towel and toilet paper is really the fineness of the material, right? The paper towel is designed to be more coarse. And nobody really said, you know what would be great about toilet paper, let's make it more coarse. And so as a result, it's a lot finer. And again, what's happening here is the paint is soaking down through, and we might need to help it out a little bit. So one of the things that I can do here is if I take a piece of paper towel and put that over the top, then I can press down on here. And the paper towel will absorb some of the moisture, but some of it also will be pushed toward the paper. Now, the fundamental difference here is one of subtle degrees perhaps, but I'm going to come in here and I'm going to now peel up. And what I want you to notice is that this time the colors that are being revealed are much softer. Let's compare this to what we had with our previous, where we see the texture, and that's really the point. And in this one, we're getting really things that almost like they've been painted on using a very soft brush. So again, we can get some different effects using toilet paper versus paper towel versus toilet paper, but just want you to be aware. Both of those are options in our texturizing and working with paints. Fantastic, let's take a look at our next opportunity. Okay, our next technique, well, again, not the kind of thing that might be common in every household, but I have one in mind, and that is a can of air. This is dust off. This is used for cleaning out computer keyboards and electronics and just blowing the dust off of things, but any abstract artist will find that this is a handy tool to have if you need to create something that's a little unusual. Let me share with you what I'm talking about. I'm going to go in here. Let's work with a little bit of red here to begin with. I'm going to take and I'm going to put a blob of red on my paper here. Now I have protected around my paper a large sheet of just foam that came as packaging for something, and I keep it in the background here because what I don't want to do is necessarily redecorate my studio by putting paint everywhere. So I'm going to be a little careful here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to approach my paint and I'm going to use the air to kind of drive it around the paper a little bit. See I do this, and it creates a very again organic kind of look and feel. And let's mix a color in here. I don't know what'd be good with this. Let's get some teal of some sort in here. We'll put it down here again. I don't think I need as much paint since it does a pretty good job of coverage. But again, an opportunity to kind of start to blend them together now. The bottom line is that it allows us an opportunity to put some dots of color and then really spread them around using our compressed air and create an interesting effect. So that's what we're looking for. It's something textural. But in this case, again, a can of compressed air will allow us to create a different type of textured effect, and that's what we're looking for. Let's take a look at our last texture option. All right, and the last thing we want to look at for a possible texturization of acrylic paints with things we have lying around the house is fabric. Now, again, you may not have large mounds of fabric like some crazy quilter guy I know, but the truth of the matter is that you probably have something that you can use that's texturized. It could be cheesecloth, it could be something, an old washcloth, but something that will allow you to create an interesting texture. I have here some upholstery fabric that I've used for a previous project, and it has a kind of a burlap fabric feel to it. And what I want to do is I'm going to use it almost as a shape in here. And I'm going to use a relatively thick paint. We'll use a couple relatively thick paints. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop it onto here. By the way, I should probably mention that it will modify the the piece of fabric, so don't expect to get this back. So, by the way, if you're using a washcloth that you want to use as a washcloth in the future, probably not a good plan. All right, so let's get some of that. Again, I'm going to use a paintbrush really just to do some pushing here. Some paper towel to work with. And I'm using, you'll notice, a fairly thick paint. And if I go too wet with this, it has a tendency to let the water through, but not necessarily the paint. So we're going to try some bold experiments. What I want to do is I want to kind of just use my paintbrush as a tool to push the paint down through the fabric. Now, depending on how thick your fabric is, and of course the wetness of the paint is all going to matter here. What we're trying to do is to, and it may take a few moments, you may have to really kind of work this paint into the fabric, is we want to be able to see if we can start getting it through. So it's starting to come through a little bit, not huge amounts. So I'm just going to kind of work it and work it and work it some more. Okay, let's see how we're doing there. So some of it's coming through. Now I'm going to try something that I've not tried yet, and I'm not guaranteeing the results, but I'm going to use one of my brayer rollers. So by the way, this is just a platen roller. It's known as a brayer. It's used in printmaking to take ink or paint from one surface and put it onto basically your printing press. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this as a way to kind of force a lot of the liquid through the fabric here and see if we can bring that texture in with us. So I'm going to just kind of push it, almost like I'm squishing it. And looks like we did something there. Let's pop this up and see what happened. Okay. Now again, this is kind of like, feels like printmaking 101 to a certain degree in what we're trying to do here. But again, the overall goal is to create something that looks a little bit texturized and is not just dropping basic colors in here. Now, I'm not in love with it, I'm going to be honest with you, but I just, as more as a proof of concept, would I probably come back here and figure out ways to work with this? Another thing I could do is, reverse this and maybe hit it with my brayer again, like that, and see if I get something that's a lot more enriched. There we go. That actually worked out pretty nicely. I might even be able to repeat it here and create something that, there we go. That's much closer to what I had in my mind's eye. And so we're getting the burlap pattern in here, and it's almost as if we're using some sort of a halftone printing process in creating our paint here. So I'm really happy now with how that came out. That's much closer to what I had in mind. Now the last thing we need to do is we need to see how our salt project works. So hold on one second, let me get that prepped, and then we'll see what the outcome has been. Okay, now as you can see, I was able to take this, we let it dry, and I had to wash it off. I had to get all the excess salt that was stuck to it off, obviously. But I want you to notice, this is the cool thing about using the salt as a texturizer. Anywhere where the salt landed, it drew the water up, and it's created a bit of a kind of a tonal area. It's a little softer than where the paint is. So the paint stuck to the paper. Where the salt was, it stuck to the salt, and when we wash that off, we get this really cool effect. Now again, what you do with these effects are entirely up to you and your creative process. But again, it's good to have these in your back pocket for when you're working on something, you're thinking, how can I enhance this? Instead of just flat blocks of color, which is easy to put down, how do I make it into something that's visually more interesting and engaging? Which is what our objective is when we're doing anything creative, right? We want people to look at it and say, that's really interesting to look at. Anyway, that's all I have for you this time. Thank you again so much for joining me. It means a whole heck of a lot for you to be here. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. It really helps us out. That's all I have for this week. This is Spider. Thanks so much for dropping by, and I'll see you next time.